Hey, Pilates Stratosphere. I am pleased to be here with Amanda Delaquila. Amanda, hey.
Hey, how you going?
Yeah, great to be with you.
You too.
So today we are going to talk about how you decomplexified your client assessment process, but not only how you decomplexified it for yourself, you rolled it out to a team, your new process. You rolled out to a team. So I think this will be of interest for people who are interested in simplifying their own assessment process, and also to people who studio owners, business owners who are interested in the eternal problem of how do you roll things out and have the team enthusiastically adopt a new process. So can you please introduce yourself to the Pilates Stratosphere?
Yeah, of course. Hi, my name is Amanda. I am a worker and owner of Mission Possible Fitness, MPF Studios in Sydney. And yeah, I have been teaching Pilates myself for about 8 years now. And I'm currently enrolled in the clinical Pilates course with Breathe Education.
So, tell me the backstory a little bit. Like, tell us about your Pilates business and what first tell us about your Pilates business. Give us a little background.
Okay. Oh, some background. Well, we started out as a boot camp actually. My brother decided to become a personal trainer, and he basically asked me what I was doing at the time, which wasn't a lot. So I decided to do a personal training course. We were doing an outdoor boot camp, and we had 3 clients and I was one of them, and we would run 5 sessions a week. We ended up moving that business into a subleasing situation, and we decided it would be good for me to go and do a different course that we could team together 2 different things. And he suggested Pilates, and I rolled my eyes and went, oh my God, do I have to? And so I just went and did it. And what we figured out through that process was it actually served a greater purpose because we had people with injuries. We were doing mainstream classes, just box fit, trampoline fitness, tramp fit. We TM'd the tramp fit name. We were doing strength sessions and mat Pilates. And yeah, we did that for about 4 or 5 years. And what we came to understand was that with clientele with injuries and post-pregnancy, pregnancies, so forth, and other issues that they were having with their bodies, we could team the combination of Pilates and strength training together, and they worked really well functionally for people's bodies.
And so what does your business look like now? It's presumably it's no longer a boot camp in a park.
No.
And so you've got, and you told me just off air before we started recording that you've ordered a whole box load of reformers recently as well. So so what does your business look like now, and where does Pilates fit into it?
Okay, so now we've transitioned to, we opened a single studio in Bella Vista in Castle Hill, and we had our strength side of the studio and our Pilates side of the studio. So we basically set up reformers and studio equipment on one side, strength training on the other. Christmas time 2 years ago, we had to switch those rooms because the demand for Pilates was doubling the demand for the strength training sessions and personal training. So we've since done that. And in the meantime, in that whole process, we franchised the business and then internally had people purchase our studios in both Dural and Rouse Hill, which is sort of sitting in they're within a 10-kilometre radius of each other. And all of those 3 studios have the same setup. They have a massive Pilates studio with reformers and equipment. and then a smaller strength training situation. And all of those 3 studios are running, operating both with personal trainers and Pilates instructors and clinical Pilates. And then we also have another 2 studios over at Lane Cove and Crow's Nest in Sydney, which is run by Crow's Nest is run by the lovely Bea, who is one of your instructors, comes through Breathe as well. And yeah, we've got a lot of Breathe people in our midst, which is fantastic.
So when you say a very large Pilates space, describe that for me. Like what equipment have you got in there?
Each studio's got basically 8 to 9 reformers on the floor, Cadillac, ladder barrel, wonder chair, various other equipment, devices of torture, in a shared space. So at any time we can have multiple, say, classes and studio, or classes and privates, or consultations and privates, sort of running, next to each other, with each other. We have a lot of instructors working in the room at the same time.
So when you say a class and a studio, you mean like might be like, say, 8 people on reformers doing a group session where everyone's kind of doing the same exercise together, and then there might be a studio session where you got 3 or 4 clients working on the ladder barrel and the chair and the Cadillac, and each person in the studio session is doing their own individual program? Yeah,
individual programs, but like it's 3 to 1. So the studio caters for group reformer classes, studio sessions, which we have defined as 3 to 1 instructor, and then private sessions as well. So the 3 to 1s are specifically catered programs for the individual. Yeah.
And so so where does your assessment process fit into all of that?
Well, we our whole business, we use a Clubworks apps for all of our bookings, and all of our leads, let's say. All of our leads come in. They are contacted. Everything is booked in, and immediately they go into a consultation process. We don't allow anyone to just rock up into a class. Everyone that's in a class is there, and the instructor has full knowledge of, if they haven't personally done the consultation, they have full knowledge of that person's body ailments or any sort of injuries that they may have, or problems that they may be having, and all those notes are documented through Clubworks. So those are shared documents between the instructors in the studios, so that everyone's on top of, I guess, what we're doing and where we're going with each client.
So did I understand you correctly that if I want to come and do a group reformer class with your studio, I have to book in a consult, and that whoever does the consult will then basically sort of talk to me about presumably my goals and whatnot, and figure out what's the best class. Is group class actually the best situation for me, or should I be doing studio or whatever?
Correct.
Is that what happens?
Yeah. So when you ring us up and you speak to the lovely Tabitha, you will have a consultation with a 2-class, that's the intro pack, let's call it. So for you, if you were a new beginner, you might do the consultation in 2 privates. If you were a long time reformer person that kind of had some idea of the reformer and knew their way around, you might do just the consultation and then go into the group classes for those 2 sessions.
So it sounds like, what you're describing there sounds like to me a very structured process that sounds like you've ironed out all of the kinks from it. Like, it seems like a process that is very well defined. So, now we get to the title of today's conversation, which is how to uncomplexify your assessment process. So, like, where was the problem? What wasn't working for you?
Well, we never used to have a consultation process. So that was the problem. And when the Pilates classes started to grow, we saw that there was an issue with that, where the if an instructor had a group session, say the 5 a.m. session, and the 5 a.m. session, the people that were in that class, 6 of them had been coming for a really, really long time, and a new person decided to drop into that class. Adjustments would have to be made to that program for the morning, for example, which is, all of our instructors are capable of doing that on the spot, of course, but we want to make it, so that everyone's getting the most out of that 45 minutes, whether they're a beginner or whether they're, wherever they are in their Pilates journey, everyone's at a different spot,
Right. And so are you saying that you see, like I agree with you that it's a skill to be able to accommodate someone who's a brand new beginner alongside people who are more experienced. But I think there also is some kind of limit to that. Like if I've got half a dozen people in the class who are like very experienced and really just want to go hard, and then there's someone who's trying to figure out which is the foot bar and which is the carriage, it's going to be pretty hard to accommodate both of those people in a way that leaves them going, oh, that was awesome. That's exactly what I needed. So I think you can do it up to a point, but then there's a limit to it. And so are you saying that was becoming a problem for you?
Well, yeah, because our mission as a business and our goal has always been to educate and achieve individuals and help them with their fitness goals, and to do that through education, training, and support. And we find that when we know who's in the class and we're able to support them and divide our attention equally between those people, that's very successful. People love the experience that they're having, and that they're getting what they're coming in for.
Yeah, and I think you're right in that. What you're implying there is that if I've got a group of 6 or 7 really experienced people and then one brand new beginner, well, sure, I can give them different levels of challenge in exercises, and I can, move some people faster and some people slower through the workout if I'm skilled enough. But it probably does mean I'm going to spend a disproportionate amount of my attention on that new person.
Yeah.
And that the more experienced people are going to get a commensurately smaller amount of my attention. It's like, in reality, they're the ones paying the bills. Like they're the ones coming 3 times a week for the last 2 years.
Exactly. And it's about dividing the attention appropriately. And not only that is that giving the client what they're coming in for, but I don't want anyone to feel uncomfortable or out of their depth in that situation either, because I think that that's unfair. And I think that I don't want someone to feel like leave the class and feel like, oh my gosh, I felt not enough, or, we're not about that. It's, I never want to put someone in that position where they feel that, whether they're amazing or whether they're a beginner, you can feel that on all levels.
Okay. So, all right. So you were having people just kind of show up in your group classes, and that was becoming a problem. So, yes, tell me the story of how you introduced this assessment process then.
So the assessment process is basically we book an hour consultation with that client. They get booked in with one of our instructors, and we basically we sit down. We had a consultation form, and our original process was we have an hour with that person, and there's conversation. There's conversation that includes talking about them, talking about why they're here. That's a really important question. Why are you here today and what's brought you to us? Hearing some of their story, finding out what they need. And then we kind of were going through about 10 or 15 exercises on the mat and on the reformer, just to see where they were at within their own body. Because in that sort of conversation process, we might be talking about injuries, surgeries, conditions that they may have in their body, how that's affected them. There's a lot of information, I think, that's derived about a person in that conversation that's very, very important. And I would say that before they even move, we can almost sense what's happening in their body through that conversation. It is important. It's very important. What we're being told.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably the most important part of the assessment.
Absolutely. It's and a lot of the times, those consultations, vulnerability is shown, and honesty, and it's not uncommon for people to break down. They might be frustrated by an injury. They might be having a really hard time at work. There could be stress. There could be all sorts of things going on in their lives, and that becomes very apparent when we see them move their bodies. Those things, they stick out.
All right. So you're doing this. So is that your current process, or is that the process before you made these changes?
That was our current process. That was before. We've simplified it since this point. Probably since it's been in the course.
So when you would do it, so you would sit down and talk with somebody, understand their story and their motivations, their goals, their concerns, their history, and then you would put them through a sequence of 12 to 15 exercises that would basically, and tell me if I've got this right, sort of assess their spinal range of motion, their strength, their flexibility, their coordination, those types of things, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So after you've seen them do, roll up plus swan dive plus push-ups plus whatever, that you've got a pretty good idea of where they're at physically.
Yeah.
All right. And then based on that and plus their goals, then you'll decide, okay, well, you should start with studio, or you should start with group, or you should start with one-on-ones or whatever.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we leave that, when we go through the consultation process with our instructors, we encourage them to use their intuition as to where that person should be, should start their journey, their Pilates journey. Either are they suitable to go straight into group? You can get someone coming in for an assessment and they've done 5 years of Pilates, and you do a full hour of Pilates with them on the reformer and they're doing acrobatics in that hour, whereas other people are just sitting at footwork and they're getting used to the carriage move, and there's some nerves, and perhaps they should do a couple of private sessions so they can feel familiar around the equipment before we drop them into a group environment, just to make sure that they're comfortable in their movement,
I love what I think I hear is an implication there is that basically your instructors who are performing the assessment, sounds like they're being pretty directive towards the end of the session, where they say, hey, here's what I think you need to do, right? You need to do one-on-ones, or you need to do group or whatever.
Absolutely. I think that, Raf, even if you came into my studio and I had a 20-minute conversation with you, that conversation is enough for me to tell you how I can help you achieve your goals. So let's look at it as a prescription. When I go to the chiro and I leave and she says, okay, I'll see you next week, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm seeing you next week. Okay, great. And I just do it.
Right.
Because she knows my goals.
Right.
She knows where I want to be.
Interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Like when we go to, when we as Pilates instructors go to somewhere, like we go to a chiropractor, we wouldn't, you would expect the chiropractor to sit down and talk with us and ask us what the problem was and all that chiropractor stuff that they ask.
Yep.
But then we would expect the chiropractor to make decisions about the treatment, right? We wouldn't expect the chiropractor to say, I could crack your SI joint, or if you prefer, I could massage your piriformis.
That's right.
Or we could just do hamstring stretches, up to you. It's like, we often expect something similar from, as Pilates instructors, we often expect our clients to make decisions about what the best plan is for their own health and fitness. It's like, we say to the client, would you like to do one-on-ones, or would you like to do studio, or would you like to do group? And of course, like, the client's preferences are an important part of
course they are.
of the conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like that idea. That it just seems weird to me, actually, that when we go to another health professional, we'd expect them to make a lot of the decisions about the treatment after they've understood our goals and had that conversation with us. But we wouldn't expect them to consult us of like, oh, how many treatments would you like to do or whatever. It's like you'd expect the chiropractor to tell you how many treatments you need.
Exactly.
Right? You wouldn't expect them to ask you how many treatments would you like.
Yeah. Yeah. When can you afford to come? Is it once a month? Like something,
yeah. Yeah. So I feel like that's something you're doing very right is, listening to the client, understanding their story, their goals, their motivations, their concerns, their limitations, their physical limitations, whatever it might be.
Yep.
And then once you've understood what they want, your expertise is like, oh, well, my expertise is to help you go from here to there, right? And what you need to go from here to there is you need to do this. This is the pathway. Do this, then do this, then do this.
Exactly. And for me, it's an easy process because if someone's just spent an hour telling me what they want, then I'm going to say, well, if this is what you want and this is where we're going, this is what you're going to need to get there. It's that simple. There's no questioning around that. So if that's 2 sessions a week, if that looks like 3 sessions a week, or if that looks like, hey, I think you should maybe throw in a PT session there as well. It's like I said, it's a prescription. It's helping them, and we're delivering our mission. We want to help people achieve their goals. So I'm not gonna sugarcoat how much work needs to be put in to achieve that goal and say, well, just turn up once a week when you feel like it. No, if you want to achieve that goal, this is what you need to do, and this is how we're going to get there. Let's do it.
Right. I mean, and it seems so obvious when you say it that way. That, well, if you know their goal is going to require them to do 3 times a week and they go, I only want to come once a week, and you're thinking like, well, that's not going to get you there.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I want to achieve my first full pull-up in 3 months, but I only want to come once a week or whatever. It's like, it's, surely it's your obligation to say to them, hey, look, that's what you've proposed there. I'm going to take your money and we're going to do a session every week. And in 3 months, you're not going to be able to do a pull-up, right? Because what you've proposed there is not the solution.
It's not. It's just, you know what? It's if that's what you want and you want me to help you, I can help you best if we do it this way because it's worked. Look, at the end of the day, we are human beings, and we all need, like, I see a chiro and I see a physiotherapist because I need someone to see in my body what I can't see. There are things that I can't see in my body, and I need help with those things. So when someone comes to me and they're asking me for help, it's my job to help them to achieve those things. I think that's very straightforward, and it always has been in my mind.
Great. I'm sure that's a big part of why he's successful. I think the perfect marriage there of taking the client's goals and expectations and preferences into account is like, that conversation part that you're having at the start, where you're basically deeply understanding why they've come to you and what's important to them, and all of their emotional kind of concerns around exercise, if they have any, or whatever's going on for them.
Yeah.
And then once you fully understand what they want, you're like, oh, okay, well, here's how to get that.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where you have more expertise, obviously, in exercise programming than the client does. Otherwise,
they do it themselves.
So, but the client has more expertise in, right. But the client has more expertise in knowing what their own goals are and knowing what their own concerns are and what their own preferences are like. So you each have like one piece of the puzzle. And once you stick your 2 puzzle pieces together, then you can come up with a plan that achieves their goal. But so I really like that. And I think a lot of Pilates instructors, and I used to be this way as well, sort of fall into the role of being, I guess, what I'd call an order taker. Like, I don't know, if you go down to the local, I don't know, food store and you say, I'll have, a sandwich with lettuce, cheese and tomato or whatever. It's like, you just, the customer is telling you what they want and you just sort of go, okay, great, here's your sandwich, right? Rather than the role of a health professional, which is more consultative and first seeks to understand, what the client's trying to achieve by having a lettuce, cheese and tomato sandwich, and why that's important, and what's the problem with what they're currently doing, what they've tried in the past that hasn't worked, and all of the rest of it. And then going, actually, what you need is not a lettuce, cheese, and tomato sandwich. What you need is whatever else, right? It's then prescribing the solution to their problem. So I think that's brilliant. I think it's a subtle point, but it's a fundamental and really powerful point, that when we take the time to understand the client's goals, needs, preferences, concerns, etc., and then once we've fully understood, we come up with a plan and say to the client, okay, here's the plan that's going to get you there. And like that sort of, so rather than sort of saying to the client, oh, you could do one-on-ones, or you could do this, or you could do that, just saying like, hey, okay, great. I feel like I've heard you. Here's what I've heard you say. Okay. And if that's true, that that's your goal, here's the plan.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. And it's complete with a follow-up phone call.
That's the way to help people achieve their goals.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't leave not knowing what's going on. They leave knowing that they're going to receive a phone call that day. They're going to be booked into the sessions in the time preferences that they've given me, and I'll see them on this day. And there's certainty in that for them and for me.
So you walk out of that session, both of you, the instructor and the client, with certainty as to what the next steps are and when those next steps are going to happen.
Correct.
All right. So Pilates people out there in the stratosphere, if you're struggling to, I think this has been a bit of unexpected gold in this conversation already, that if you struggle and if clients come in and you're possibly falling into the role of order taker, and the client walks in and you find yourself saying, oh, what did you want to do, one-on-ones or group or whatever, and the client just tells you what they want to do and you go, okay, the change room's over there. I think this is a really powerful thing that you could implement, of sitting down with that client for half an hour and listening to their story and asking them a few questions about their goals and preferences and expectations and concerns. And then once you feel clear you've understood them, formulating a plan for them and saying, okay, here's the plan that's going to get you to that goal. And the plan might be some combination of one-on-ones, X number of times a week, or /and studio sessions or /and group sessions. But it's basically you telling the client, okay, here's your goal. Here's what you need to do to get there. All right. So that sounds like a freaking awesome process. I love it.
Yeah.
So why did you change it?
Well, first of all, you're hired, because that sounded really good, what you just said. You can come work for us in your free time, right?
If I need a job, I know where to look.
You just delivered that really well. Okay, I'm sorry. What was the question?
You had a great process there. So Why did you change it?
No, well, I mean, I guess that the only thing that we changed, that is our process. That is a great process. The only thing that we changed was basically what we were doing. We were very structured. We were very regimented. So let's say prior to doing, for the girls that I'm working with, Emily and Clancy, at the moment, we're doing the course together. And prior to doing the Breathe course, our consult process was very structured. We are doing this exercise, we are doing this exercise and this exercise. So there was 6 mat, 6 reformer. And we were looking at cueing, correcting, and we were looking at technique. And a lot of that unnecessary micromanagement of people's bodies, I'm not sure if that's the correct terminology for it, but I'm rolling with it, has gone out the window. And we've simplified the process. The line of questioning and the conversation that's had is based around now home and work life, sleep, their movement outside of their work, their functional goals. And then we go through whatever movements we feel that we need to see from them that day. So that could be mat, that could be reformer. It's simplified in the way that we're paying more attention to the whole person that's in front of us. We're adopting that whole person framework. We still have the same delivery at the end of that consultation. But we're not locking instructors into, you need to do these six exercises and then write down what you've seen, and then do these 6 exercises. Make sure you talk to them about their breathing. Make sure you talk to them about, abdominal contraction and this and that. We're just allowing that person to be in that space, to give us the information that they need to give us, and to see where that's going to lead us, with how what step we're going to have for them next.
So the overall structure of your process hasn't changed, that you do a talking assessment, then you do a physical, an exercise-based assessment, and then you give your guidance. So that basic structure remains the same. What has changed, though, are the questions that you ask.
Yes.
And in that initial phase. Also which movements you ask the person to show you, and how you are cueing them through those movements. So let's talk to me about what you've changed in the talking part of the assessment, because what you just described briefly there sounds like, I was just thinking, that sounds like awesome. If I went to a physio and they asked me those questions, I'd be like, this person knows what they're doing. So yeah, tell me about what you are. What do you ask in that talking phase?
What I'm asking about is I'm trying to get a deeper understanding of where their body's at. So for me to understand that, I need to know, basically, it looks like the whole person framework. I need to know how much sleep they get a night. There's a discussion about their home and work life, any injuries or surgeries, and their functional goals, because as you well know, someone may come in and say, well, I want to be able to do the splits in 3 months. And the next person comes in and says, well, I've just had grandkids and I realize that, I can't bend down to pick their toys up off the floor. So there's two very big differences between those two goals. And there's a big indication of where we're going to go with that person. Once we find out that functional goal, we're going to reverse engineer it, right? So, and start from where we need to start from. So the person who wants to do the front splits, I'm looking at I might pop them up onto the reformer straight away. But the person who needs to get down and pick up that thing off the floor, well, I'm just going to start with their range of motion. I'm just going to see where they are today. So it's really driving straight into that person, and when they walk through the door, where they are today and where we're starting from, because that's the starting point. And it doesn't matter what it looks like. That's where we're starting from.
So it sounds like you're basing a lot of the movement decisions around the client's functional goal, like the activity that they want to be able to do better or fully that they can't currently do.
Correct. And I think a lot of the time, well, not I think, I know that a lot of clients that come in, they don't allow themselves enough time to just breathe and just be in their bodies. I think that's a big thing that I see in the studio. Allowing people to, instead of cueing and correcting and directing and doing all of those things that are important, don't get me wrong, they are important. We want people to be doing things correctly, but there's a time and a place for that. And when people come in, just allowing them to be in the space and to find themselves in the space. I think a lot of the time I hear people as Pilates instructors, and I've said it myself 1,000 times, I help people. It's more than that. It's, because for me, I feel like I can help someone when I'm down at Woolworths by letting them go in front of the queue, like go in front of me in the queue if they're rushing, that's helping someone. I feel that tapping someone into their own body and helping them to feel what they're feeling, as you would well know, just getting someone to tap into themselves and feel movement is an extraordinary thing. It's like watching a little caterpillar turning to a butterfly, because that's where they fall in love with Pilates. That's, and it always happens. It's that beautiful process where people come in and go, oh, Amanda, I don't have a core. Well, you do. It's definitely there. Let's uncover it. And giving them the space to find those movements. I've learnt that correcting and cueing and moving people constantly is just not necessary. It doesn't need to be jumped upon straight away. I can allow them to do what they do and show me how their body moves. And then we can start working on some other ideas or some other patterns of movement, and develop those over time. Yeah.
Do you think that, because this is something that I kind of wrestle with, I'm not sure what the answer is. Do you think that there's something there tied up in, like what, I guess my question is like, why do you think we as an industry, I've done it. We've all done it. Many of us still do it. Love you if you still do it. No hard feelings, no disrespect. But why do we feel the need to basically be talking constantly and correcting the client 15 times as they extend their elbow? Why do you think we do that?
I would say that previous trainings had myself personally very focused in on those things. And as I moved through, I remember going to a later course, like a few years later, and the instructor online said, hey, listen, all you people that have been teaching Pilates for a while, make sure you get your cueing right. You've all laxed into this, Pilates laziness, I think she said. And I knew she was talking to me. Because I started paying more attention to, yes, the movement, but I started paying more attention to the person, I think. And what I found is that the less talking I was doing, the more attention I was actually giving to that person. It's quite a beautiful process. I'm still rolling through this process within myself, to be honest. I'm always learning. I learn every day. I get a different person, a different conversation, a bigger challenge, something that comes out of left field, and it's challenging and it's surprising, and I learn something, and I love that. But yeah, I feel that perhaps my growth and my knowledge as an instructor has allowed me to stop talking as much, because I'm more focused on where I'm going with that person. And sometimes that requires less talk and more action.
Yeah. I think there are several layers there, and one of them is to do with our confidence and sort of that we don't need to prove ourselves or to demonstrate our expertise or skill or value by like the number of cues and corrections that we give. And that the quantity of cueing that we give has almost zero correlation with how much value that person receives in the session. But it's a visible marker of us, like, quote, working. Like if you're just like literally standing there watching the client in silence and letting them experience, like you on the outside, you're basically not doing anything, right? So it's like, well, what are you doing to earn your money? Whereas if you're like, telling them every like muscle in their body should be doing, every moment of the exercise, you're doing something, So I think there's there's a component of that for a lot of us, and I also think that just that notion that the value that the client receives is not proportionate to how hard you work. It's like we're in a knowledge profession where your skill, and there's skill in exercise prescription, but also your skill in empathy and connection and goal setting, all of these sort of human skills as well. Your skill determines the client's outcome, not how hard you work. Like you can't do the push-ups for the client, So all you can do is skillfully, empower the client to do the push-ups when they need to do the push-ups. And so I think there's a disconnect there between, like, actually this is not the same as digging ditches. It's not like if you work twice as hard, you get twice as much done. This is knowledge work where you can multiply your effectiveness by asking the right question at the right time, rather than, asking 50 questions or giving 50 instructions necessarily.
Yeah, correct. And I think it's definitely, there's definitely different, every instructor is different. And I am definitely not an instructor that feels the need to continually talk and cue and rattle off muscle names. And I think there's an ability to shift yourself as an instructor between, as you said, those human traits. So being like empathetic on one end of the scale, and then a bit stoic and tough love down the other end. And the ability to transition between those, depending on the person that you're dealing with, is a really good ability to have, I believe. And I think it serves people very well.
Yeah. And I think what you touched on there is a really profound truth, is that when you're focused on what the client needs in the moment, rather than on what you're doing, like rather than focus on, like, am I using the right cue or the right prop or the right whatever, and you're focused much more on what the client needs. Like, well, does the client need to be understood in this moment, or does the client need clear direction, or does the client need a figurative, like, whack on the backside?
Exactly.
Or do they need a figurative hug? Like, and so when you're focused on the client, it often, I find anyway, it becomes very obvious what you need to do. And I think a lot of that sort of excessive talking that I used to do came from focusing on myself and thinking, focusing like, oh, the client will think I don't know what I'm talking about, or the client, will think this of me, or my fellow instructors will think that of me. It's like, well, no one gives a shit about that. Like, the clients come here because they want to achieve an outcome.
Yeah.
So let's focus on that.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, everyone in the room is probably just focusing in on themselves anyway. Do you know what I mean? So they're worried about this themselves.
All right. So you've gone from a very regimented, structured process to a much looser process, but it has a structure, but it's a much looser structure. So you still do the talking, and I'm sure there are certain questions that you commonly ask, like, why did you come to see us today, and what will a successful outcome look like for you, and do you have any concerns, and those types of things. But it's really, is it the case then, just checking, that you're eliciting, which means to draw forth the client's goals, their concerns, maybe what they've tried in the past that has or hasn't worked for them. Is there anything else that is that what you're checking for, and is there anything else that you're checking for in that initial conversation?
No, that sounds pretty much spot on. Yeah, But
you're also talking. You also mentioned, I now recall, you talk about their sleep and their work and their home life, because when you talk, and which was really struck me as awesome, because if I come to you for back pain or shoulder pain or whatever, it's like, well, those things are all relevant. So, and even if I come to you to want to do the splits or do a pull up, like, those things are relevant.
Of course they are. Yeah.
So how do those questions fit into the consult? Like when do you ask? Because I guess what I'm imagining is some people, when they some instructors out there might feel like, oh, well, is it my place to ask about sleep? Would people find that, like, kind of intrusive? So how do you have that conversation in a way that the client's, like, happy to have that conversation with you?
I think I'm a fairly upfront, open, and honest person, and I find that vulnerability breeds vulnerability. I feel sometimes understanding and listening can often lead people to say more than what they thought they would say in a consultation. Like I said, a lot of the times people do end up in tears, and you know, I'm not scared to ask them about their pelvic floor function on, you know, in that first 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you know. The conversation for me is me trying to connect with them to find out how they've arrived to where they're at today, and what are all the situations and what are all the paths that have led them to me, and how are we going to move forward collectively? How are we going to move forward and help you to change those things that we're talking about? And all of those factors come into a person's overall health. You know, their sleep patterns, their food, their what they do for work. You know, as you would have seen, you know, we saw so much, you know, during COVID, the aftermath of COVID, the rise of back, you know, sore backs and sedentary lifestyle, and what that brought into the studio was another level of you know, people in pain, and a lot of the time unprescribed pain, and they don't know what it is, and they don't know how to fix it, and they don't know what to do. And sometimes we're the last port of call. They might have been to 5 other therapists or physicians, and they might be just about to head in for surgery, and they really don't know. And I think that going into those conversations they're so important. They're so important because it really gives me direction of where we're going to go with them, with that person.
Okay, so it's that person's story, and you know, what brought them to you today. You know, what they want to achieve, what if their concerns are, if any. What also just their general health, so sleep, work, you know, lifestyle / diet, and so you're building a picture of their general health and what they've tried in the past, and maybe getting a sense of some of their beliefs around exercise and pain and fitness. And I think also you're also allowing them to feel heard, possibly for the first time ever, by a health or fitness provider, because instead of interrupting them in the first 11 seconds, you let them tell you, you know, their story. And then when you're clear on what their goals are, and I don't know, maybe I'm sort of imagining this, but so tell me if I'm wrong. But you know, when you're asking people like, why did you come in today, or what prompted you to come and see us, that kind of thing, it's like often you'll get kind of a surface level answer to that, like, I want to get fitter, or I want to get in better shape, or you know, whatever. But I'm imagining you go a bit deeper than that, and you go,
yeah, why?
You ask them kind of like, well, specifically, what would that look like for you?
Yeah.
Asking
why and being silent is sometimes a really powerful question. The ability to sit for a minute and just say, yeah, and why is that? And just pausing. And you'll get a deeper level. You'll get another level, and then you'll get another level. And you just need to be paying attention, you know? It's important. It's important because in those answers as well, it tells me how emotionally, or either how physically and how much in pain they are, or how emotionally in pain they are, and how driven they are to achieve what they're telling me they want to achieve. You can hear that when someone's talking to you. If you get to the reason underneath the reason underneath the reason, you know, and it's not just to be fitter. There's always something deeper than that, always.
Right, agreed. And for the grandparent who can't pick up the toys off the ground, yeah, that's a very pragmatic and specific kind of functional goal. But it might be underneath that, might be like, well, don't feel like I'm being a good grandparent.
Yeah.
And then it might be like, well, I've only got a few years left on this earth, and this is a special time with my grandkids, and I feel it's going and I'm not able to be present with them.
Yeah.
Like that becomes a powerful motivation for somebody to achieve their goal.
Even when you said it, that makes my heart go, oh, okay, let's go. What are we doing? Do you know what I mean? I want to. That gives me connection. I connect with that. You know, that's the information. It's the deeper level, because then I'm on board. I'm excited. I'm already excited about what we're going to do and how we're going to achieve it and how we're going to get there. Like, I'm pumped. Come see me every day. You know, that's the connection. It's so powerful. It's so powerful. But you have to, I think you really do as a person have to just stop and hear it, you know, listen for it. You know, it's huge.
All right. So just say we've done our assessment, our talking assessment. So how do you choose which exercises or which movements you want to see me do? What's your process?
Okay. So the process of where we would direct you to go next would be depending on that information that we've kind of gathered. So we've gathered information, we've seen you move, we've talked about your goals and where you want to go.
So sorry, can we just back up to the seeing the move part? So like you've talked about my goals and we've done all the talking.
Yep.
But so now you just want to see me move.
Yep.
Right? So instead of the 6 mat work and 6 reformer exercises, what are you doing now? And how do you choose which specific movements you want me to do?
We have, Emily and I kind of put down a few things. We just like to see some general spinal movement on the mat. So just some flexion and extension and rotation, and see what feels good, see what doesn't feel good. Obviously, those decisions are made as well based off that conversation if there's injuries and so forth involved. And then just going into simple movements like just doing chest lift and bridges. Go there. If we're confident there and we're moving there, let's get to know a reformer. Basically, if you don't already know one or you haven't been introduced to one, I think the majority of the time, the rest of the time spent should be on the reformer, moving and talking to people about how movement on the reformer can improve their strength and help them to achieve their goals. So I would kind of.
So I'm on the So I've told you about my grandkids.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. So I've told you about my grandkids, and I want to pick up the toys off the floor. And you've watched me do some chest lifts and things, and now we're on the reformer and we're doing, I don't know, feet-in straps or whatever. And you're going, oh, this one will really help you increase the flexibility of your hips so you can get down to the floor. And you explain to me why why it's going to benefit me, right? How this is going to help me achieve my goal.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but there's also there's that moving back to that element as well of just tapping you into your body and seeing how in tune you are with your body. So you might just kind of lay down and start with footwork. As you know, we've experienced in the studio, some people coming onto a reformer for the first time need to just be walked through and explain a few things about the reformer, get used to the movement. So footwork's a really good place to start, especially if they haven't been on one before. Feet in straps, having a look at some arm movements, and some general abdominal work would basically give us an all over look, at their body and their movement. And we'd be able to kind of, we do, say, well, here's where we're going from here. And if that looks like a couple of private sessions because they're not super confident, or some studio sessions because they're working on a particular injury or ailment that they're having an issue with, or they're good to go into group. And the groups that we have are a variety of fitness levels and a variety of, there is no entry level of fitness for Pilates at all in my books. You can come in at any time and you can start from any spot. So we would kind of go from there, especially with the groups, putting them in with a group of people that we think would be suitable for them. and where they would feel comfortable. I think that's the most important thing, is making sure they're going into the spot where they're going to feel comfortable.
So, I mean, it's not entirely dictated by when the client wants to attend. It's also partly or fully dictated by, I think you'll do well in Mary's Wednesday night class because I think that group of people will suit you.
Yeah. Yeah. Or she says, well, someone might say, I can kind of come from 6:30 any afternoon. We might say, okay, well, fantastic, because I've got a group and it's with this instructor. She's going to be great. She's going to show you the ropes. The group's a really great group. And lead in that way. If that's where we believe they should go in straight away.
And you said it's kind of an intuitive decision. And I imagine most people listening to this, once you've sort of talked to someone about their goals and understood their history a bit and then watched them move in a bunch of, sort of foundational movements like spinal flexion, extension, rotation, some basic movements on the reformer, you'd have a pretty good sense of whether this person needs a couple of one-on-ones or whether they're ready to jump straight into group class. And so it's just kind of a gut feel. You kind of just know it when you see it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You can, I think, if you spend an hour with a person,
All right. So I want to just before we finish, I want to talk a little bit about your rollout of this process, because what you've explained to me sounds like a great change, like a real powerful change. But it's not just you. You've got multiple trainers working with you, and then you have multiple studios, and you've got a franchise, which is presumably pretty systematized. And that's kind of the whole basis of what a franchise is like you're selling the systems and the standard operating procedure manual. So how do you roll out? So firstly, how do you enroll your staff if you've been doing it a certain way for ages? How do you enroll your staff to do it a new way, and how do you get them on board with that and get them enthusiastically participating in the process? What's your secret?
Well, I think everyone. I truly do believe that in a studio you attract in the energy that you put out, and that's comes across in your clientele, and that definitely comes across in your instructors. And the majority of the time, the instructors that we're attracting in are usually very like-minded people to ourselves. And when they come in to join us, it doesn't bother me where they've studied or how they've studied, obviously if they've got the qualifications to be teaching reformer, that's important. But we do say straight off the bat, we have a consultation process. We will run through that consultation process, or the manager of the studio will run through that consultation process with you. So your initial, if we're putting you onto a couple of classes, you will be shown that consultation process straight off the bat, and how we do it, how we enter into the notes, how we share those notes, so that they're brought straight into a community and a team that works together for the greater good.
Mm-hmm. So, all right. So, and I agree with you, and that's been my experience of running a business is, how do you manage change? Well, the first thing is pick the right people to work on the team.
100%. It doesn't mean that you don't sometimes, though. It doesn't mean.
And, at Breathe Education at the moment, we've got a fantastic team of people where change is very easy to talk about, but it wasn't always that way. And I think it's certainly partly cultural, but I think a lot of the culture comes from who you hire and how you go about hiring people in the first place. So, yeah, I agree with you on that one. Attracting like-minded people is very important. So, all right, but I'm intrigued. I want to dig a little bit deeper. So, so just say I'm, I don't know, Clancy, and I've come on board with you some time ago, and you inducted me and said, okay, Clancy, here's our consult process, and here's what you do, and here's how you write the notes, and here's how here are the steps, etc. And then so I'm going about my merry way, doing my consult, writing my notes, doing all of the things like you've told me. And then one day you come along and go, oh, we're not doing it that way anymore. we're doing it this new way. Like, so how do you manage that transition?
Well, we do. We do put on. So we do like consultation, sort of training. In the studio. So we might say, okay, everyone who needs to touch base on their consultation training, come across to the studio on Bella Vista on a Saturday. We're doing it in this hour. We do educational things. We try to do them quarterly in the studio. So for all of our instructors, because like I said, we're all from different schools. And that I see as fantastic, because we all learn a lot of things from each other. So a lot of the time getting together and sharing ideas. I think the last consultation process I did was over at our Dural studio, and I sat down and I had a couple of new instructors, and there was a couple from Breathe as well, and we just went through this process together, and it was an open Q&A and a let's roll through this, and let's talk about why we do this and the reasons for it, and that we want the client to feel comfortable. And I don't know. It's people just jump on. Everyone seems to jump on board with it. Everyone's like, yeah, that's awesome. Let's do it. And I think that does come down to having the right people in there. It really does. I've never had anyone say, no, I'm not doing that.
And by the sounds of it, you've you've chosen the right people, and you've also built a culture where people are open to adjusting.
It's a culture.
And making changes.
Yeah, it is. It's a culture. And that's really important, where like I said to you at the beginning, our business was started by myself and my brother. We're very family orientated. We see our staff members as our family, and we treat them as so. And we're a close knit community, and it's beautiful. It's amazing. And that includes, keeping everyone in the loop. I never want any of my instructors, and like I said, they're all at different stages of their training, but I never want them to feel like they're with someone and they don't know what to do, or they don't know where to go next with that person, or they've done a consultation. And, it happened a few months ago where I got a call and an instructor said, I'm out of my depth, Amanda. I don't know what to do with this lady. These are all the problems she's got. Here are the scan reports. What do I do? And I said, it's okay. It's going to be okay. That's the culture that we have. It's supportive. It's a community. And, I want our instructors to feel not only that they can be themselves and they can teach the class they want to teach and train the clients how they see fit, but I want them to also feel supported and safe in that environment as well. I think that's really important, to feel supported and safe in your workplace.
Sounds like you found a really beautiful balance between structure and freedom for the way that you run your business.
Yeah, I guess so. Is that what it sounds like?
Well, it sounds like you have processes, but you also allow people. The processes are more guidelines. They're not like step by step tick box things. They're like, okay, here's the general principles of how we do this. Here's the general process. Here are the general steps that this is the sequence of events that needs to happen. And within that, go crazy and do it the way you do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that there's I'm not, like I said, everyone has a different process for how they're teaching and what they're doing. And, I encourage all of our instructors to go across to other studios and participate in other instructors' classes, because that's how we learn. We learn things when we participate with other people. But there is I am not afraid as a person to say to someone, I may not be the person to work with you. I might not be, but I think that Emily would be fantastic for you in this situation and what you're describing to me and who you are and what you need. This is the person that I think that you should be working with. And I think that our instructors should have the freedom to teach how they want to teach. And they all have, like every human in the world, we all have strengths and we all have flaws. Now, if I exploit the hell out of the instructor's strengths, those clients are getting what they came for. And it might not be what they thought they walked in for, but for me, it's finding the person that's able to work with them and deliver them, what they need.
Because when they walked in, they thought they just wanted to pick up the toys off the floor, but now they realise they want to spend the most meaningful years of their remaining life with their grandkids.
Yeah, that's right. Might have gone too deep.
So how has this played out? How does, now that you've had clients going through this new sort of intake process, has that changed anything about the way the classes run?
No, not really. I think the only difference is that we can facilitate clinical a lot better now. It hasn't changed the running of the classes at all. No, not at all.
Why does this enable you to facilitate the clinical sessions more effectively?
Just because we're paying a little bit more attention to moving people through stages of their, particularly, if they're in rehabilitation, but we're moving people through those stages. And if they do come in and I just want to do the group reformer classes, fantastic. That's where we want them to go as well. But we might take a month or so, or, to get them there. So just moving them through the processes and, making sure that we're keeping them on the roll towards their goals.
When you say stages, what stages do you mean?
Of rehabilitation, or the stages of like moving from one session to another?
Oh, either. You said you make sure that they're moving through those stages. So what do you mean by that?
Like the progressions of their program that we're working on with them.
So you will map out. So if I come to you and I want to get into group classes, but you think it's a better plan for me to start with maybe some one-on-ones and then move into studio for a bit and then go to group classes, you'll map out a plan. Stage one, we'll do some one-on-ones and we'll get these things happening. Stage two, we'll achieve these things in the clinical setting. And then stage three, you get to do the group classes.
Yeah, exactly right. So we might go, hey, you know what, we're gonna do a 10 session. We'll do you 10 sessions and we'll do those in studio. Once we've done those 10 sessions, we'll reassess, and then we'll look at the groups that are gonna suit you moving forward. So everyone does come in, within 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, and, doing a couple of classes a week, they can completely change their movement in such a short period of time. Totally. It's miraculous,
amazing.
It's amazing. And, sometimes those 10 sessions, they're getting into the class already, we're giving them really some crazy stuff. Some people move really quick and other people need time to move a little bit slower, and that's okay too. Everyone's different.
And I love the assumption that you made in that statement of, we'll start you off with 10 sessions of clinical and then we'll see which group sessions are going to suit you best. So it's like, well, of course you're going to do group sessions. Like, that's not a question. The only question is which ones will suit you best.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really powerful assumption and I think that goes back to right at the start of the conversation, how we talked about, not being an order taker. And once you're clear on what that person's goal is, that you don't sort of ask them about the program, you tell them, hey, all right, so I feel I've understood your goal. It's this. Is that correct? And they're like, yes, that's my goal. And then you're like, okay, well, here's what you need to do to achieve that. And it's like, and here's the plan. We're going to start you with some one-on-ones and we'll get you a 10-pack of studio sessions, and then we'll see which group sessions are going to work best for you after that.
And it's direct. Awesome. Because you know what, Raf, if you come to me and I don't think that you can achieve your goal, you're not going to think that you can achieve it either, right? So you achieving your goal essentially starts with my belief in you that you can do it. And that's the delivery of that, because it's the same for me. If I go and try and achieve something, I would achieve it twice as fast if there was someone there going, yeah, you know, you're doing awesome, you know, and it doesn't matter what the goal is, you know, everyone's goal is different, you know, it never looks the same. But my belief in that goal for you drives you as well.
Right. And also just the knowledge, your knowledge and experience, right? So if I've never, you know, tried to achieve this goal before, or maybe I've tried but I've never succeeded. So basically I don't know how to achieve this goal yet. And you've done this with like 10,000 people. You know, it's like, well, you know the steps that are required to achieve that goal, right? And so just tell me what to do, you know, tell me what to do, and bam, then I win. And so that's what we try and do with our business, like with our diploma, with our cert. We map out the steps. We've seen thousands and thousands of students. We know exactly, you know, the students who do their practice teaching, they're the ones that succeed wildly, right? So we try and put a lot of things in place to really make it easy for people to do the practice teaching, or, you know, so basically you just map out the process and go, okay, if you want to achieve this, here are the steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Bam.
Yeah.
There's your path.
And it's a process of elimination, isn't it? So these are processes that have been tried and tested, and, you know, it's probably been tried and tested by me, and I've, you know, perhaps failed and gone and tried something else, and that's how we learn. And then we go, okay, well, that didn't work that time. This time, this thing that I'm doing now, this is working. So we're going to stick with this. You stick with what works, right? And, you know, if it works, you keep doing it.
Well, this has been awesome, Amanda. Thank you so much for talking with me. And I look forward to having another conversation with you maybe soon about the whole franchise thing, because I'm intrigued. Maybe we can get your brother on as well. I'm intrigued about, you know, your journey of franchising a business, because I've never, I mean, I know Aaron from KX, but I've never sort of sat down with him and interviewed him about his franchising experience. I'd love to talk to you, and just because you're kind of much earlier in the process. You've got 5 studios at the moment, right?
Yeah.
But you're aiming for a much bigger number.
We are.
And and so you're, you know, relatively early in the journey of creating a massive empire. And and yeah, I'd like to understand. I'd really like to pull apart this, or understand the transition from being just like a standalone business that was just you and your brother running this sort of single studio, to now it's a franchise business with 5 locations. And the even though it's like 5 times the size, I'm sure there's an order of magnitude more complexity, or maybe not complexity, but maybe just different thinking in how you run a 5 studio business compared to a 1 studio business.
Definitely.
So I think that's something that a lot of people will find interesting, because I know a lot of people who I talk to, you know, want to open a studio, but then they also think like, oh, I wouldn't mind opening a second studio after I open the first studio. And so it's like, my experience is the second studio was like 4 times harder than the first.
Yeah. It's like when you have, like, I've got 3 kids, you know, you have 2 and you're like, oh yeah, this is okay. And then you have your third one and you're like, oh my God, I've only got 2 hands. This is going to be hard work. You know, and then it's okay. Like, it's fine. They're all still alive. It's great. But yeah, things multiply. And, you know, there's a lot of putting out fires before they get started, you know, and there's a lot of that going on. So yeah, no, it would be fantastic to, get my brother on and have another chat, very soon. That would be amazing.
Great. Well, thanks so much, and I look forward to it.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.